Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Six Man with Cam. I am your host, Cam Ursery. And man, it's been a wild 2 weeks of college football. And I know I wasn't able to get to you guys for the first week of college football. So I apologize. I had some things to set up, things of that nature. But we are here, and I was very shocked and kind of knew what was going to happen as well, kind of back and forth, but very shocked at what's happened at the landscape of college football for the past 2 weeks. I mean, we have Texas A&M falling. We have a lot of big teams falling. Notre Dame falling to Marshall. We have Georgia blowing out Oregon. Ohio State struggling with a bad Notre Dame team. And Alabama, of course, struggling with, I don't know what Texas is right now. But, ladies and gentlemen, this is a crazy week, a crazy past 2 weeks of college football. And it's only going to get crazier. Some big matchups coming up. Back Penn State and Auburn this week. Huge matchups. For me as a Georgia fan, while I'm wearing the UCLA hoodie, I don't know why, but me as a Georgia fan going to South Carolina, that's always a scare. But that's another topic for another day. We'll get into week 3 and recap that as this week is done on Saturday. But just transitioning back to week 1. I mean, we had the early kickoff. We had Georgia and Oregon, and I will say right now, and I'm not saying they're winning the national championship, but right now Georgia is the best team in the country. They're better than Alabama right now. They're better than Ohio State. They have played better. They've looked better. They're giving up 1.5 points a game. I know one game was against Sanford, but for the people that are out there saying Oregon wasn't a good team, that same Oregon team beat Ohio State last year with Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith and Jigba, C.J. Stroud, and Chris Olave. 3 NFL wide receivers, an NFL running back, and then an NFL quarterback. They beat them last year. And for the people that don't know, Kayvon Thibodeau did not play, and 5 of the starters didn't play. So the exact same team outside of the quarterback and the running back from Oregon, Georgia beat that team 49-3. And it's it's becoming the Alabama thing where you play a team opening night, you blow them out, and all of a sudden they suck. No, maybe that team just doesn't suck. Maybe the team that beat them is just that good. It used to be that way with Bama. Look at Texas A&M a few years ago during the COVID year. Texas A&M had one loss. That one loss came to Alabama. They lost to Alabama by 30. Outside of that, Texas A&M went 9-1 that year, and they beat pretty much everybody on their schedule. They beat everybody on their schedule, obviously, if their one loss was Alabama, but Alabama handed it to them because it's Alabama, not because Texas A&M wasn't good. Because if Texas A&M wasn't good, they'd go 9-1. I guarantee this Oregon team, they'll somehow find a way to win the Pac-12 and be in the picture of winning it. So for the people that's out there saying, oh, Georgia just beat Oregon, okay, why Ohio State didn't beat Oregon last year? And Ohio State was at home. Why that didn't happen? Ohio State's so good. We have to stop doing that and understand maybe this team is just that dominant and not because this team is just that bad. Transitioning to later that night, we had Ohio State and Notre Dame. Disappointed in Ohio State. And it showed because a lot of people were saying, well, Jackson Smith and Jigba's, missing. What does that have to do? You still have Emeka, who's another wide receiver, and Marvin Harrison Jr. Those two guys are NFL wide receivers and an NFL quarterback and an NFL running back. You have all that, and you only put up 7 points through 3 quarters at home. And we saw that Notre Dame wasn't good. They lost to Marshall the following week. And I'm just tired of hearing people say, well, this one person was injured. Georgia just won a national championship with a 3rd-string quarterback. Alabama won a national championship with a 2nd-string quarterback. Alabama lost last year to a 3rd-string quarterback in Zach Calzada. Teams are winning games without their star players. Ohio State won a national championship with Cardale Jones, because JT Barrett or whoever the quarterback was, I think it was JT Barrett, was hurt that year. They won a national championship with Cardale Jones. Teams win games without their star players. Look at Bama with the Devontae Smith year. Nobody said, oh, Jalen Waller's missing. Jalen Waller was gone. I think he got injured the Tennessee game. So he was gone for 7 to 8 games, limping at the national championship game. Nobody said, oh, Bama's missing their star wide receiver and Jalen Waddle. They shouldn't win. They shouldn't be dominant. And they were one of the best offenses in college football history. Devontae Smith won a Heisman. So for the people that are making excuses, majority of Ohio State fans saying they didn't have Jackson Smith and Jigba, yeah, you also have 2 other NFL wide receivers and an NFL quarterback. Alabama didn't get that excuse years ago when Jalen Waddle went down. Georgia didn't get that excuse to go last year. They didn't even have George Pickens last year. George Pickens played 2 games. They didn't even have him last year. And they still won a national championship. They didn't have their starting quarterback. They still won a national championship. Injuries happen. Your team has to step up. Ohio State was 100 times better than Notre Dame. They should have beat them by 17 to 20 points because that Notre Dame offense is terrible. But somehow Ohio State, again, for the second straight year, came out sluggish at home and didn't look well, but they pulled through in the fourth quarter, and that's all that matters. I have to see what their offense looks like against a really good defense and a really good offense. And you probably won't see that maybe to Michigan. I don't know how good Michigan is, but you probably won't see that until the college football playoffs because the Big Ten is terrible. And then transitioning to the last game that night, Florida and Utah. It's nothing much for me to say. I'm a Georgia fan. All I would say is I told you guys so. For the people that obviously don't know me, obviously I haven't been able to come on social media and say I got Florida. But for the people that know me, I was telling everybody all week, Florida's going to win that game. They're going to find a way to win that game, and they won 29-26, and that was a big win. Week 2, noon kickoff, shocked the world. Everybody thought they was going to go down. I told everybody calm down, but it still wasn't an impressive performance by Bama, but they pulled through and won. And for the people that don't know, Bama is missing their 2 starting wideouts. The transfer from Louisville and JoJo Earl. So it's not like they're fully healthy either, but you didn't hear the excuse being made for Alabama that they're missing their 2 starting wideouts. They still went to Austin, Texas, which, in my opinion, that is probably the biggest game in Texas history in the past decade. They haven't had a bigger game like that, a bigger matchup than Alabama coming there. So you know that place was rocking. Quinn Ewers got hurt. Everybody's saying again, it's what I said about Ohio State. There are teams that have won national championships with their second and third string quarterback. We don't know how great Quinn Ewers is. We don't know how great he is. He could have lit up the game, or the game plan that Nick Saban had for him could have worked after that first touchdown he threw. So we don't know, and that's if and a but. Texas haven't been good since 2009. They've had 1 10-win season since 2009. So now all of a sudden, since they had a 1-point game with Bama, they could compete with Alabama in the SEC. Absolutely not. Win your conference first, then we could talk about that. Bryce Young is still amazing. He's Houdini. He pulled it off, won that game, and that's all that matters. Bama has to go back to the drawing board. Their defense looked good and bad. The secondary still needs some working on. I know they listed Eli Ricks, but they look pretty good. Their offense, they just need to get guys back. They get guys back and get that camaraderie. Bama is Bama. Nick Saban, you know he got in their tails. They're going to be just fine. I'm still, as a Georgia fan, always nervous about Alabama. Then you go later on in the day, you got Texas A&M losing to Appalachian State. Not shocked. For the people that know college football, Appalachian State does this all the time. Just the week before, they almost beat North Carolina in a 65-63 shootout. This week, they beat Texas A&M on the road at College Station, hostile environment. This isn't a shocker. Granted, Texas A&M shouldn't lose with the stuff Jimbo Fisher's been saying, but that recruiting class, the number 1 recruiting class of all time. But I'm not all the way shocked, only because Appalachian State, they've been doing this ever since they beat Michigan. They always give great teams, really good teams, high-ranked teams, a run for their money. So that's not a shocker. The shocker was Marshall beating Notre Dame. All I've heard this offseason is Notre Dame is different. And I give Marcus Freeman a pass because these are not his recruits. This is his first year. These are not his recruits. And, man, it was bad. Their offense is bad. You got Stephon Gilmore's little brother taking it to the house with a pick 6. You can't put up more than 15 points. That's why I always say in week 1, don't put too much stock into week 1 unless like a Georgia happens where they blow out an Oregon. You put up some stock in that because that's a high-ranked team blowing out a high-ranked team. But you don't put in any stock in Ohio State barely escaping Notre Dame at home. When Notre Dame has shown us in the past, I want to say their record against top 10 opponents is 3-25. One of those ranked wins came against Trevor Lawrence when he had COVID, so DJU had to play, and they still almost lost that game. Notre Dame has not proved to be a really good team on a national schedule, on a national scale in general. So I don't want to hear any more talks. They lost to Marshall. They're 0-2. They started off the season number 5. So that right there should show you guys preseason rankings do not matter. Notre Dame started off the season number 5, and they lost to Ohio State and then lost to Marshall at home. They're not the number 5 team. They're terrible. They're not a good team, and they should remain unranked for the rest of the year unless they win big games, which I don't see them being USC or Clemson. So being 8-4 shouldn't get them back in the top 25. Transitioning, lastly, to what I called the game of the day, Kentucky and Florida. Great game. One of those teams had to lose. Florida is ahead of schedule, man. I'm nervous as hell. They're ahead of schedule. They look really good. And I assume with Billy Napier doing what he did at Louisiana, he was going to come having these guys look right. These are not even his recruits. These are Dan Mullen's recruits. And yet, they look really good. They lost against Kentucky because Kentucky looks really good too. They're physical at the O-line and the D-line. Their secondary isn't too bad. They have an NFL quarterback. They won a game without their bell cow and Chris Rodriguez. They get him back. They may win that game by 2 touchdowns, or the game might be in more control than what it was. They had to get a pick 6 to kind of help him out. Anthony Richardson didn't look too well. He's a raw prospect, but he's going to be really good as the season progresses. I'm nervous as a Georgia fan because I thought this year in the SEC East would be a cakewalk. It's not. We got Tennessee. Tennessee has one of the best offenses in the country. They had it last year, but this year, they're even better. They got a big win on the road against Pitt. And then Kentucky gets a big road win against Florida in the Swamp. That was Kentucky's first time beating Florida in the Swamp in over 2 decades. So you know Kentucky's real, and any win in the Swamp is real. If you know that, if you watch college football back in the Tebow days, that place is always rocking and it's hot. And it's called the Swamp for a reason. And Florida looks really good. I would like to see what they look like on the road because they've played 2 big games at home. So that means they got a couple of road games and neutral site games, especially with Georgia. So I would like to see what they look like. But, man, college football is shaping out really well. I'm really happy with what I see. It's going to be exciting. There is no lock-in this year. Unless JoJo Earl and the transfer from Louisville for Alabama comes in and they're just looking like the second coming of Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle, or the second coming of John Mechie and Jamison Williams, college football is wide open. Anybody could win it. Alabama could win it like they normally do. Georgia could win it and be back-to-back champs. I wouldn't be mad at that, obviously. Ohio State, if they could fix their defense, because I don't believe in their defense still, and if they could clean up that offense, they have a chance. And it's some dark horses out there that could sneak into the number 4 spot and maybe make some waves. Maybe Clemson could do that if they could get their quarterback situation together, because that defense is legit. It's just as good as Georgia's. That defense is legit. But with that being said, I'm excited what college football season brings. That was a recap of week 2. You know, we're knocking these videos out, trying to bring them to you as quick as possible. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at the 6 Man with Cam. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Cam Mercury if you want to tweet to me and talk back to me. And then my main Instagram is Cam Got Fans. Yeah, we'll change that soon, but make sure you follow me there. DM me. Do anything you want to do as far as like going back and forth with me. I'm all open ears about who you feel like is the best teams in the country and your outlook on college football. But with that being said, this is 6 Man with Cam. I'm your host, Cam Mercury, and we'll see you next time.